Okay, well these videos are basically just going to be kind of going over what we're looking for when we're opening supplies in lab, what your instructor is going to look for, what you need to be aware of. We have lots of things that we're thinking about at the same time, so we're just going to go ahead and verbally show you and tell you, and you can learn from our mistakes, hopefully. There we go. So Casey's going to go ahead and open the back table. So the first thing I want you guys to do is when you get into your ORs, I want you to what I call arrange your furniture. Now by arranging the furniture, that means that you're going to move things away as far as you can. Give yourself plenty of room so that you don't bump into anything, back into anything, and you're able to open your back table without contaminating. There are two kinds of folds on your back tables. This is the fold that we have on ours because we reuse them. So this is one way to open. So Casey went ahead and opened the flaps, dropped below table level. She's going to come around all the way to the other side, and she's going to grab the flap from underneath and she's going to pull straight out. She's not going to lift up, she's not going to snap it, she's not going to fluff it, and then she's going to drop it. Now watch her, she's walking all the way around the side of her table, keeping it in front so that she can see where she's going, and then she's going to come to the other side. So you can see better from this view. She's going to pull it straight out and down. She's just going to let it go. Use her knees. We get lots of quad exercises here by dipping down. And now you can see her table's opened up. Everything below table level is unsterile, and everything on top is good. Now she's going to go ahead and open up her basin. And you can see from her basin that she's keeping it a safe distance away as she's opening these flaps because they are big. And also your basin is at a different level than your table too. So you're going to open that first flap, open the second one. She can use her hand to support the ring stand to help her. And she's just going to lift it down. Watch her head, she's keeping it far away. And then she's using that stooping method again to push it over. She's going to grab below at the ring stand. She can either grab with her hand or she can use her foot to kind of push it in a little bit. But again, we don't want it too close to our back table because they're two different levels. The next thing she's going to open is her Genesis pan. She's going to bring it over a little bit here for us so that we can observe more. She's going to look for her indicators. There's this indicator, her arrow, one on the other side, and it's locked. She's going to look at the top of her basket and see that there's a blue dot that says my filter is in. So she's going to take her hand, she's going to pop it, cover it with her other hand so it doesn't fly off. I have seen them fly before. She's going to pop that side. Okay, she's going to be facing her sterile field, and she's going to take off the lid like a hot pot.
Just make sure you tuck your fingers up here too in the handle so they're not hanging down like this, because when I lift up then they're right beside the instrument basket, so make sure you tuck them in and then tilt back.
She's going to pull it back, get herself far enough away, her face was not over the table. Now she's going to look at her filters there, and you can see that we can see all the blue, and sometimes it's shifted. If you cannot see the blue, then like that, Casey's just going to kind of show you real quick. If your wrapper comes up looking like that and we don't see our blue, that means that we don't have a good seal. So our original one was perfect. She's going to take it out. She's going to look at it. You can also see the creases of where your pan lid was resting on it, holding it in. So Casey's checking for holes. You can't look for holes unless you hold it up to the light. And it's okay. So we're going to go ahead and put that under. Watch how Casey bends from her quads again. There's bending down, not having her face over the top of the pan. If you can kind of look just a little bit to see that your indicators are in there. Yeah, and she saw them. So, okay, the next thing we're going to do then is, I call it kind of like painting your way out of a room. We're going to start in the middle, which was our back table. We're going to go to the next item that's closest to our back table, which is our basin, and then our third item, which is our Genesis pan. We don't have very much in asepsis to open, but in orientation you're going to have a lot more to open. All right, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up our gown. It comes in a double wrapped package. Casey's going to take it out of the first wrapper, and we're going to check for holes. Now she's going to place that gown at the front edge of the mayo stand. This gives you the most coverage in the front. It covers your metal, and it also gives you an area for your gloves to lay. Now there's a lot of memory in these brand new wrappers, so you have to be really careful that they don't flip back over. If it flips back over, then
of this.
Yeah, it will be contaminated because you can't reach over. So Casey's going from side to side, and you can open it up a little bit by doing that, being aware not to turn your back to your other table, and then peel off your last one. Now, you can see it's kind of hooked up a little bit right there at the corner. She can fix that. Just making sure that you don't reach over your sterile item. So we have our mayo tray with our gown on it, and it is a significant distance away from our back table. We don't want it close to our back table. You have to remember what we're doing on this is we're gowning and gloving, and we have water that's dripping and our hands are not covered, so we want to make sure that it's far enough away from our back table that we can safely gown and glove without contaminating our back table. We gown and glove off of a mayo stand. We do not gown and glove off the back table because our hands are wet.
Should we ever need to move this, you make sure you grab back here, not up here. Occasionally I'll see students try to grab right here and move this. Obviously this is part of the sterile field where they're going to be gloving from. So make sure that you would grab it from an unsterile area if you would need to move it away for some reason. But like Cindy said, we want to keep it a safe distance from the back table over there. Another thing that we'll see too is sometimes this wrapper will come where it's kind of folded back up like this, and people will try to get really, really close and pull it back. So that's way too close. So if it's folded up like this, you can simply just grab the back of the wrapper and kind of flip it back. That way then you're a safe distance away from what's going to be your sterile field where you're going to be gloving from.
Now we're going to rewrap this really quickly, and Casey's going to show you some really bad ways to open. And what we see when you guys are opening it, you're nervous about things and you're trying to figure out how to do this correctly, and you end up reaching over your sterile field. So Casey's going to do a little opening that we see happen.
So kind of do this and then I'll go like
And see how she reached her hand up across to hold that? Now she just reaching over her sterile field. So remember, you have to come from the sides so that you can open.
I'm gonna do this.
And they've done that before, just straighten it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
So resist the urge. If anything, remember you can pull from down here because these are going to be unsterile, and we have to watch out for them when we put the gown on. So, but you kind of pull against yourself. You're pulling tension. So if you pull more than one corner, you're kind of pulling yourself away there. You also don't want the gown to end up like this, where you end up with these corners that are exposed, because then when I'm trying to glove myself here, then my sleeve is really close to this edge that is unsterile. So the way you get away from that is just making sure that the gown is always opened on that front edge instead of open in the middle of the mayo stand.
Okay, so this is what your gown should look like, pulled all the way to the front edge of your mayo stand. Okay, we're going to open some other items here. Casey's going to open blue towels. So this will be part of your competency assessment. And this is an envelope wrapped item that's wrapped up in KimGuard. You're going to have a lot of things that are wrapped like this. Light handles, instrumentation, other items. So we're going to go ahead and open. She's going to open it the correct way first. She pulls the first flap back and controls it with her finger. See how she stuffs it into her hand there? She's going to stuff in the second flap. She's going to pull that third flap and stuff it under. And then that last flap, she can either hold everything together and toss it. Okay, so then she's going to step up about 2 feet away, give it a toss, and let it land. At this point, then she's going to check for her wrapper for holes. This is not a quick thing. It takes a while. You got to look for holes. Sometimes you have to stretch the material out so that you can look and see. Always hold it up against the light, and then you can see if there's a hole to kind of show through. Now she's going to open kind of a sloppy way. All right. It's kind of hard for us to do it wrong when we do it right for so many years, but she's going to grab and pull it down, and then she's going to reach her. See how she's reaching over everything and she's turning it? Look how close her sterile item is to her arm. And she's rolling it around that way. That would be not a very good way to open.
So
And-
instead you want to cross the arms in the front instead of ever reaching around behind like this. Because you can't ever tell how close you are to something that's sterile when you're reaching around behind there. So always err on the side of crossing the arms in the front instead of crossing in the back.
Okay, now she's not
people
controlling
will
her,
kinda do like
she's
that.
not controlling her edges and her wrappers, so she's just kind of, you know, grabbing them back and not really keeping track of them. So when she tries to open them or toss onto the back table, she can end up losing a wrapper or losing something. So now watch her try and throw that on without controlling. Now, did she touch it with her wrapper? Don't know. So that's why it's really important to control all those flaps in your hand as you toss. All right, so the next item we're going to open is a suture packet. And there's the end that opens, obviously. It's got a little opening edge there. When we open sutured onto our back table, I don't toss like we do with our towels. What we call shoot it on. It needs to be a quick movement because it's a small package. So Casey's going to stand about 2 feet away, and she's going to be angled to the side, and she's going to cross her arms. So now watch her arms as she shoots that. She like crosses over. Guess what? Sometimes you miss, right? But she's always going to check her wrapper to make sure there's no holes. If there was a hole, our table would be contaminated. All right, we're going to try again. Okay, so we're going to look for that chevron edge, and we're going to crack and shoot. Some days are like that. I told you this was informal. It does
What
happen.
we don't want is, like Cindy was saying, to open it up all the way because you really risk it sliding over that laminated edge. So remember, you have that lamination, which you can see better on this side, but where the heat seal has closed the package, because if you open it all the way because it's so light and then you try to flip it on, it's pretty likely that it's going to shift over that laminated edge. So that's why we want to go ahead and just open it and then just push it onto the table with that crack and shoot method. So, but if it touches the table and falls off, like Cindy said, we still need to check the wrapper because that table could still be contaminated if this wrapper had a hole in it. So even if it hits the floor, we got to make sure that we check that wrapper. Okay.
Okay, we have laps. So again, it's kind of like our gown. It's double wrapped. We've got our first outside wrapping, which we call the dust cover. We're going to go ahead and check that for holes real quick too. Even though it's a manufactured product, we still check for holes. This is not necessarily an envelope. It kind of looks like it's an envelope wrapped, but you can see that first flap is just rolled. I call it rolled over. So you had to gently open it up in your hands, and then now we can finish opening it just like we did with our towel. We're going to keep hold of our little tails. And okay, there we go. Here's a good example of no leading edge for Casey to grab without reaching over. So Casey, reach over like we're not supposed to. See how she's reaching over there? She has no idea where her fingers touched, right? So this is when we're going to use that, what I call tease it back method. We're going to pull it back. She's going to grab it, pull it back, and then she knows that her fingers didn't come anywhere close to that sterile item. So this is what we're going to be watching for in lab a lot. Tossing it on. Double check the wrapper to make sure that there's no holes. And there are none. Some items come in paper plastic. This is a good example. Your Raytex sponges, our cautery pencils come that way. And we have a hard surface to hold on to, and then the paper on the outside. And you will see that there's an area that says where to open. So always look for that area first. Opens the easiest. She's going to go ahead and peel that back, hanging on to it so that she can actually flip it out onto her back table. And like again, sometimes that happens. It does. What happens is it will stick. Casey will show you that sometimes it kind of sticks on that.
It's almost like sometimes it gets caught in the seal, like we were talking about before. So if it hits the floor, it hits the floor. It's not a big deal. We're not going to actually pick it up and toss it again, but just so you guys can see when we toss it on. I always tell my students too, if you're right-handed, put this in your right hand because it's almost like you're throwing a softball or something like that, because you do have to almost have a motion of a little bit of down. Because if you just sit here and go like this, then your Raytex are going to go straight across your table. So if you just kind of do this kind of thing, they're going to go straight across. So you do have to kind of come down a little bit to make sure they go on the table. But remember, you guys talk about that chicken wire, right? So it comes up from the table where items can go through. So I make sure that I'm far enough back that when I come down, I'm not over the table like this, I'm down back here, so it's still gonna have the motion where it goes down to the table. So if you have it positioned this way and you're right-handed, it's gonna be a lot easier for you than if you try to do it with your left hand.
Okay. So like Casey said, over the table, unfortunately you are going to see that a lot. People kind of lose their idea that we need to open this safely as opposed to I don't want to waste my supplies. Well, if you are opening a supply that you're worried about wasting, then maybe that's something that you should open, have open to you later once you get in scrub. So I'm going to have Casey show you the wrong way to put those Raytech on your table. So she was way over the field, reaching way over. The correct way is to give it a nice toss like she was saying before. So now that it's out, let's try that again the correct way. There you go. See, she didn't reach over that at all. There was a little bit of downward movement, but she didn't go over that chicken wire. So that's the safe way to put your supplies on the back table. Okay, we got some gloves. I got two different kinds here. We have both a folded pair, and then the other brand is they're open, and they're both equally hard to open. So some like one and some don't. What we're going to do when we open up a packaging, we're going to look for that chevron stripe, and that's your little arrow, and that's different than the bottom side. I'm showing the bottom side is just straight across. You can't open that. You have to open it by the chevron stripe. So Casey's going to open that, and when she grabs these flaps, she's going to start peeling it, and she's going to control it with her hand. Everything was controlled. All flap was controlled. And she's going to take that, and it's going to, depending on what side it lands on, is where she's going to situate her body to open these. Now, this direction, you'll see that the gloves are on this side, and this side is the closest to her mayo stand. If she can toss those out onto her mayo stand.
But if I ended up like this, I want to toss them this direction.
Right, because see where she can do, she can hit her thumb right there. Now you're saying her thumb's on the other side too, but that momentum of tossing those gloves will keep it from touching that thumb on that side. So she's going to situate her body so her item that she's opening is at the top end of her packaging, and then she's going to go ahead and flip that on. And right, it landed pretty darn good, right on top.
You don't do this.
Yeah, we don't want to go over. We don't want to peel over.
The hand does come over the top, but it stops. So instead of coming like this, it comes, and you still have the downward motion. It's still going to go that direction, but your hand, you're far enough back for one, and for two, you kind of stop yourself before you come all the way
over. Now let's show them the wrong way to open your gloves.
So a couple of things that are the wrong way. You see people do this kind of thing where we're over the field, or even they'll open it correctly like this, but then here I am right here.
Yeah,
okay.
Up over the field. All right, your gloves then will occasionally fall a little too far. So if it falls to this direction and goes over onto your metal tray, that's not sterile. So we're going to just leave those on our field. They're going to become part of the sterile field, and we're going to open another pair of gloves, and hopefully they will land right where they're supposed to. Now if it lands just a little bit onto your wrapper this way, remember we talked about that 1-inch margin. Can you safely remove those gloves and get them on without touching the edge of that wrapper? I doubt it. So we're just going to go ahead and leave that as part of your sterile field, and we'll open another pair of gloves and not worry about the one that's hanging. Now, okay, here's another scenario. I call this the cliffhanger. I don't know where that came from, but I call it the cliffhanger. It's just kind of hanging over and extending out from my sterile field. Has it broken the plane, which means has it gone over the edge, down? No, it has not. It's just hanging over the edge like that. Now this broke the sterile plane. This is hanging down, and we could not use that one because it's hanging over our sterile edge. So if it's just kind of what I call a cliffhanger, it's good to go. All right, so we've got our gloves open onto our sterile gown so that when we gown and glove. Now we're going to have two pair of gloves. We're going to have our second pair of gloves, which would go on second after we put our first pair on. We'll put them on the back table. So Casey's going to open up her second pair onto the back table. These are the long ones. They're a booger. Kind of like suture, you have to crack and shoot and hope they stay on because they're very slick. But always remember to check your wrapper to make sure that there's no holes, since it did touch our sterile field. If you lose your gloves, then what you do is you go over to where your gloves are at, you pull a second pair, and you come back into your OR and you open your second pair.
So probably to the Mayo stand more than the back table, we'll see people with this one. So they'll say, oh, my arm is protected, so I can go like this over my field. But that's a problem because we know that this laminated edge is not sterile. And so here I was over my field like this with that laminated edge. Plus I'm way too close too,
Yeah.
and I'm over the field. So not okay. You'll see people do that. So to the Mayo stand, some students will find that if you crack it, it's kind of hard to get to the Mayo stand. So they may want to try the flip-on method, similar to how we did with the folded gloves. So the problem with the big package though is it likes to shift over that unsterile edge really, really easily. So I do suggest to students in the beginning, when you're really just starting out, that you can open on a flat surface where you kind of hold the package open with both hands like this, where it's going to be flat. Open it up all the way so it doesn't shift over the unsterile edge, so not over that laminated edge. Pick it up really carefully, and then you can come up to the field and flip it on. And then of course check your wrapper. Because to try to shoot it to the Mayo is pretty tough. To try to shoot it to the back table is a little bit easier just because you have a bigger surface. So if you find that you're really struggling with gloves, those are some things that you can kind of try maybe to do that. But we just really have to watch out for that laminated edge. And the other thing too that I'll see students do, they don't use their whole hand when they're opening. So what happens is like they'll hold this back a little bit, and then this will curl up on them and then rub all over the side of those gloves. So make sure that you're getting the whole package open, not just some of it, where then it's going to curl back here and cause your item to shift. So just make sure you kind of use your whole hand and your thumb to open that up and peel it back before you flip it on.
Okay. So if you're in lab and you're opening and we're watching you and you open your gloves and they shifted over to the side, say something. Tell your partner that you're working with, my gloves shifted over the edge. I would not use these. I would get a new pair, and then we get to do the magic of lab where we just kind of reuse the items over and over again. But you got to at least point it out and make sure that we know that you recognize that it was not sterile and that you'd have to get a new one. We have a few other items. Casey's going to grab a couple of different items over there. When we get to bigger envelope wrapped packages like drapes, I'm going to have her open this, and I'm going to show you how important it is that we keep our flaps controlled. We'll have her open it wrong, one of them, and then open it good, the second one. So, all right, so here's a nice big drape. It comes just like our gowns did. And it comes with that chevron stripe, and you go ahead and you open up your first wrapper, set it down because you don't want to put it under your arm to hold it. Checking your wrapper. And so she just has to, again, it's just an enveloped wrap item just like our blue towels were, but it has a lot of fabric, so you have to just be really careful with your fabric. Okay, so she's getting all of her corners back underneath. Just going to grab that last one. Now we've got a lot of stuff on the back side. I'm going to show you the back side. See all that fabric at the back? Now if Casey wanted to pull that back, what she would do is just rotate her wrist so that she's actually visualizing where her fingers are at. It's okay to pull those things back. Just make sure that you look and you see what you're doing. If I just see you reaching back there and grabbing without looking, I'm going to count that as you didn't know if it was sterile or not. So look back behind like she's doing, and then she can just step in and open. And she's going to check that second wrapper too because it is double wrapped. You want to open a pair of gloves and not, and just show how the corners can curl in if you don't control it. So we're going to go ahead and show you what happens if you don't control and you just pull from the middle. She's just going to pull from the middle. And they're going to roll over because she didn't have a hold of it. See, her hands aren't controlling that very end. Let's see if I can get it better. Yeah. And now it's slipping over the side. And so you need, at this point, you need to say it's not sterile, and you need to get a new pair.
I get a new one.
Yeah. So it's really important to make sure that we have full control and can roll everything back safely. Checking a wrapper and we're good. We have some other items. We have some items that are, again, are paper plastic, hard paper plastic. Now when you see an item with hard paper plastic, that's kind of like your cue that this is a really inexpensive item. And so it's we don't want to drop it. It's hard to open because it's squished into that plastic really hard. And so Casey's going to show you the wrong way to do this. All right, she's going to peel that off, and she's going to come over to her back table and click it out. All right, so she was over her back table. This is a hard item. This is metal. All right, that's a metal item. And could that have poked a hole in the drape? Yep, it could. So the proper way to do that is wait until you have a person that's in scrub, open it up, hold it, and the person in scrub then would reach in and retrieve that item. These are expensive items.
Again, you're seeing that laminated edge here. So when you are sterile and you pull it out, make sure we're gonna come, of course I would have a gown and gloves on at this time, but you come straight in and pull, and oftentimes you need to use two hands to be able to do this if it's a bigger item. But you wanna make sure that you kind of pop it out and pull it straight out, because you don't want any portion of it to go like this, because then the item's gonna be contaminated because that edge is unsterile. Really, anything that's in one of those hard plastic packages, you should probably be waiting until somebody is scrubbed in and just handing it to them. Oftentimes it'll have multiple pieces, like you can see this one has multiple pieces kind of floating around in there. So if you're trying to flip that on, you're gonna lose something on the floor. So
something that is like a cord or that's loose ends like that, they'll put it into two. You can go ahead and open it, Casey. You can go ahead and open it to two. And what you'll do is you can open with the corner. You make sure you have a good hand on the underside and you got a good hold of it. And you'll peel that top layer back and pretend I have a glove on. Your sterile person then will come in and remove that and put it on the sterile field. This item happens to be a graft, and so they just leave it in the second wrapper and to keep it safe. Some items are long. We've got some long sutures here that you open into the sterile person. Again, if we open it to the sterile field, there's no way to put this on the sterile field without reaching over. So you would crack it and have your sterile person reach in then and pull out. Now watch, Casey's going to pull down and away and then check the wrapper. So the only way to do that is to open it to your sterile person as an unsterile person. You cannot put that onto your back table without contaminating. Some ends are not very nice to open. Like this one is just kind of a funky little thing to open. The ends don't really have a peel. It's a really tight little corner. And again, this would probably be the best item to open to your sterile field. Now, can somebody open that onto your back table? They can, because they can kind of push it out with their hands a little bit. And as long as they don't reach over, you can flip it out. But see, look, now Casey got stuck. There's no way. What is she going to do? Go ahead, Casey, shake it over the back table. Yeah, that's not right.
that kills me to do that.
Yeah, it does. It's not right. It's like, this is the wrong way to do it. Unfortunately, you see that done. So when you guys are opening and you're new at opening and you're not sure, I always tell my students in Lincoln, stick with what you know, stick with what you're comfortable with, and then as you get really good at that, then maybe start introducing some other items to open. Think of anything else for opening, Casey?
Good for now.
Okay, all right. See you at the next one.